To breathe the air around Tom Paine. It's a line from a great song. I'm not sure what the great poet meant here, but I know what it means to me. The great question occurs that, though an abolitionist himself, was Tom Paine a racist? I only ask because a surprising, huge majority of the abolitionist movement were in fact abject racists. They fully believed the African was an inferior human. And there's an unholy marriage between the supremacy philosophy and Christianity. And so kicked in all the supremacist Christian impulses that cares for the less fortunate on the one hand, while sabotaging steadily, stealing and co-opting the great works of other peoples, other races with the other hand. Do your math without Arabs, dear, do try. In a sense, an Oglala Sioux, traditionally, as him or herself, possibly would find it difficult to aspire to Wall Street banker. Many of us would also find it. I personally would find it difficult to aspire to Wall Street. Is that an aspiration? But when we look at our culture, we must recognize that we value what we pay. Compensation is a good measure of what we value. So, high school teachers. So according to the European project, they become less than those who do not aspire to infinite wealth and Wall Street bankerdom. All things are still judged this way, and justice must be seen in this way. It is the one-wayness of the myth of integration. White children were not bussed into blackness, Dick Gregory, and therefore its offensiveness and ultimately its uselessness. I'm quite into the notion of integration both ways. We have much to learn. It could be said that hip-hop is not the sound and the call of protest and rage and oppression. It is also, quite simply, the sound of genius. It always has been. So I'd love to know the real air around Tom. I know he worked. He didn't own a plantation and was ambiguous about Christianity, to say the least. Maybe he was like me. Maybe his feeling about the people from Africa was based actually in admiration of what he'd experienced of them. Not then, and then in outrage at their treatment, bypassing the supremacist impotence of pity. Maybe this is why he kept real thoughts to himself, knowing he'd offend his posh friends. Oh my God, how one knows this. Maybe we can grapple with the essential thing here. Why is a belief in one's superiority so important to so many of us, since it reveals such apparent weakness of self, weakness of personhood? It might even have touched Washington, George, that is, while he exterminated people in the Ohio River Valley. He might have thought, the only way I can do this and to be good is if I am superior. And the all-white jury agreed. A friend said to me the other day that racism is natural. I said, maybe, until it isn't. Most of the movers and shakers of European history have been convinced of European/white superiority, male superiority, and it seems essential to their being, individually. I myself cannot understand this. I am an ordinary white bloke, so why does it miss me? I don't know. I just stumbled on the road. I did not choose, less taken, I guess, since friends and peers seem well convinced of their God-given-ness. Perhaps this is as good an explanation of the God invention we'll ever get. He reassures us of this superiority. See Galatians 1:8. I myself think this need of superiority, need of the sense of superiority, is contrasted to authentic self-realization, is an obstacle to anything we might call progress. Jordan Peterson humiliates a woman who asks him, a French woman speaking in a second language, who asks him to define toxic masculinity by saying smugly, it doesn't exist. And his courage immediately fails him, if he ever had any. So he says, typically, passive-aggressively, what about toxic femininity? A trick of intellectuals. And his little incel pack howls at the moon. Ex-ministers in Parliament bemoan the extremism of the day. Well, yes, the comfortable, the powerful, the status quo want to change to come as slowly as possible. This is obvious. But the status quo to some people is intolerable. Ask George Floyd. If they want it at all. They can wait, well-fledged, till the Pakistani or Jamaican becomes white enough to have no complaints left, I guess. In the US, Trump and his cheerleaders have exposed themselves, and therefore the whole of America, for the spoiled supremacist it is. And by that I mean even people on the left continue to talk about exceptionalism and this marvelous creation, this marvelous founded thing, and it turns out that it's just festering. So tell the truth. The answer here is laughable. Stop the myth that wealth is earned beyond a reasonable limit, and you will not need a welfare system, which is, after all, a capitalist invention, because the rest will have enough. Why not? Because we must have a system that recognizes and rewards the superiority of some of us. We cannot exist without that affirmation. Otherwise, we will cry, and suicide will come in battalions. Why ever does some fool jump out of a window when the economy crashes? Because of his portfolio. Why do the children in the Succession TV show freak out in episode 9 of season 3? As freedom beckons, individuation calls, persondom howls at them, but they hang themselves on an uncut umbilical. What is wrong with you weaklings? The first one now will later be last, same poet. They already are the last, dear. There's no will involved. Your God has failed you just as he did upon his invention. Why you bought him then is a mystery all insoluble, but here is the consequence. We are living the consequence while blaming government or political correctness to keep him above reproach. No wonder Tom Paine had a reputation for grump. The interpretation of that grump is revisionist. We must keep the panoply panoplied, but I can see him getting royally pissed off at the rest, pun intended, with their pious hypocrisies and obscene wealth. But if John Meacham doesn't see it, who are we? The mere happily inferior.